we are live. And so as always, we will do a quick check to make sure that everything is up and running as we hope it is. So if you're here, please feel free to sit back and relax with some lo-fi tunes. But yeah, it looks like we are live on LinkedIn. And just gonna check Twitter. Yes, all right, everything looks up and running. So welcome everyone. To anyone who is watching, please feel free to just let me know if you can see and hear me as you should. You can just leave a comment. That always feels good to know that things are up and running as you're hoping to. But let's just get started, I suppose. So first of all, welcome everyone who is already here. My name is Elias, and I'm working with the Pactto team on their growth side of things. And thank you so much, Mark, for the comment that you can hear us, or hear me rather. Really appreciate it. I appreciate you. But so, for those of you who might not know about Pactto, it's a really cool both app and team behind it. So the idea is basically to help creatives to give better feedback, both giving and receiving actually. And the idea is basically that when you use other tools, like when you want to record your screen and give some feedback to your team members or somebody even outside of your team, if you use a tool like Loom, like it's a great screen recorder, but when you send that over to someone, you're actually giving them a lot of work. So this is something that I've done literally hundreds of times, where I've given landing page feedback to other founders, and basically just looking through their website, giving them feedback, sending it over. It can be like 20, 30 minutes sometimes of a video. And of course, this means that they kind of have to look through it, and even if they hopefully appreciate my takes here and there, they still have to do kind of the job of figuring out the action items, you know, if they're watching their phone, everything might not always be super clear. And so basically what Pactto has done is to take a approach of just focusing all in on giving feedback. It's not about sending any type of screen record video. It really is here to send feedback. So what they've done is basically to build a tool that's sort of like a mix between Loom, Figma, and ChatGPT. And so what's really cool about it, the general experience is kind of similar to using Loom, where you start the screen recording and you can review either something on the web, or you can review something like a creative file, for instance, like a 3D rendering even, but also video, images, stuff like that, both on your desktop and on your phone. And what they've done is that they've built in these really great markup tools, first of all, which helps you get your points across even clearer. And I just realized that I kind of shared my screen in the wrong way here, so it's not showing up. But I will, instead of sharing a window, I will share my entire screen. There we go, I think. All right, so here we have the markup tools that you can find. And this allows you to create markup while you're talking, which is incredibly useful to getting your point across in a better way, so that you're not just kind of sitting back talking, or maybe have essentially an invisible cursor like, you know, fix this, fix that. But rather, this really helps you kind of nail the specific parts that you're talking about in a very flexible way. You can even draw arrows, you can draw freehand, whatever you want essentially. And once you've taken the time to record like this, also creating piece of feedback is really the experience of giving this type of feedback. Then it's time to send it over, and you realize that, oh gosh, like if they have to watch it and go through it and create action items out of it, you know, sometimes you are going through giving feedback, and then you kind of come back to a point like multiple times from different perspectives, and like so to then like start sitting down when you're about to send it over and kind of like make notes of action items yourself is a ton of work, and so I usually don't do it, which means I put the work on the person that's getting it. But what's incredibly cool about Pactto is that once you have shot your video, you can actually prompt the transcript from this recording and say like, hey, based on this transcript, I want you to create 10 action items, like given pieces of feedback, the most important pieces of feedback that I gave for this founder. And it just creates it immediately. So you can just send it over as a piece of text as well. You can even say, hey, like this is something that I would like to post on Twitter, which is something that I've done hundreds of times for founders, and just say, hey, you know, I want to create a post where you go through kind of the most important parts of this. And it just generates it immediately using your own language, because you've already said all these things. So why not just take the opportunity to make it more digestible? We've even tried to generate complete blog posts for your website based on this, and it just works like magic. And so like that is definitely one of the moment when Demian, the founder of Pactto, and the rest of the team showed that up to me. I was like, I have to work with this team. There's Demian right here, because I was just like, this is something I've not seen anywhere else, that kind of flexibility of prompting your transcript right as you're done, so that you can send like pieces of feedback all day long. And it's just a joy to actually record the videos and then send it over and know like this is actually very digestible to the person getting it. So if you want to try it out, Pactto is completely free to try out for recording videos that are up to 10 minutes. So highly recommend visiting pactto.com and check it out. And to give you even one more piece of personal recommendation, I absolutely love using the mobile app, because it means that I can even be out for a walk and recording things and using these markup tools as I go. And it's just a completely different experience than always having to be inside at home and recording in front of your computer. If you can kind of do it on the go, it's just an incredible experience. And so basically, together with Pactto, we host these weekly streams where we use Pactto to give feedback. And what we usually do is that we invite fantastic creative experts. So we've had Alex from Baked Design, which is an absolutely wonderful design partner agency, who's helped us look at to give landing page feedback, and even started to design new landing pages. Last week we had a podcast expert, George, on the show, and we were looking at some fantastic podcast clips and some that we felt like had a lot of potential, and we kind of walked through George's takes of like what makes just a great podcast and podcast clip. But so today we are actually just us here today. But next week we will be having a marketing designer on, and it's going to be a lot of fun to have a look at that. But today, kind of my personal expertise tends to lie in giving feedback on startup landing pages, because landing pages, not only looking at the design, but really it's a great test of seeing like how good are you at communicating your offer. So we might as well have checked their investor slides and see like how can they articulate the problem, how can we articulate the solution. But the lovely thing about landing pages is that they're public, so they're just easier to get a hold of. And so what I thought could be really fun today was that what we usually do is that we ask people from the especially the Twitter community, like who wants to get some feedback. Like we usually get dozens of replies of people that are looking for feedback. But this also tends to be kind of a lot of people from the indie community who we absolutely love, because they are just incredibly helpful, incredibly passionate. But what I thought would be really interesting today is that we could have a look kind of at some Y Combinator startups. And for those of you who might not know, Y Combinator is the best startup accelerator in the world. So what they do is they invest in companies when they are usually very early stage, I think the standard deal right now is about $500K in total. I think they kind of break it up a little bit, but so for 7% of your company, you get that money. And they kind of help you together with that community of thousands of previous startups. They help you to basically take over the world. And they've previously funded companies like Airbnb, Amplitude, Coinbase, DoorDash, Dropbox. Like the list just goes on and on. But so what I thought would be very interesting here was to look at the latest batch. So that's also one thing about how YC, or Y Combinator, invest in startups. They invest in batches. So for instance, like every winter, they invest in a couple of hundred startups. So like last winter, they invested here in 250 startups. The last summer, 219. But so right now, I think they're about to open a fall batch as well for the very first time. But the latest completed batch is the summer batch here. So I thought we would go through a couple of these startups and look at their landing pages, because of course these are funded by YC, so they should be kind of a little bit further along than like these kind of indie landing pages that we usually look at. But we'll see. Like, if our experience is that they are really good at communicating their products, who their customer is, why we should use them, what we can learn from them, or if there might still be some things where we could recommend them to make some improvements. So I thought we could basically get started here right away. So we have a startup here called Outerport. And if we go into it, we see that this is still in the YC directory, but here we can see that it says Enterprise Registry for Foundation Model Weights. So I thought this would be interesting because this relates to some piece of feedback that I often give, and that is to be very careful about the amount of jargon that you use on your landing page. And this can differ, this advice. But I thought that we would have a look together, and we'll try to figure out if we think that they are applying this in a good way or a way that might be better. So here is their actual landing page. So when we land on the landing page, we have kind of a standard checklist that we want to go through. So within design, there is this law called Jacob's Law, and it states that because users spend most of their time in other people's apps and other people's websites, we expect and actually kind of want your app, your website to look and work the same way. And what usually happens is that when, as a founder, you want to be innovative in everything you do. But a really good piece of advice that I heard once was that, yeah, as a startup, you should try to innovate only on one thing, and that thing is almost always your product. And you want to keep everything else as standardized as possible, so that you focus on the right things, and the rest is just like, it's so much to do to innovate on even one thing, so that you want to keep everything else as standard as possible. And for most startups, if you are not a website design startup where you want to like showcase this incredible new way of building landing pages, websites, you probably should stick to the absolute fundamentals and do them incredibly well before you even start thinking about kind of starting to break the rules and so on and so forth. And so that's another thing, speaking of breaking the rules, where if somebody were to take the advice that I'm about to give and go to, for instance, apple.com or Atlassian or some like absolutely massive company, Dropbox, you will probably see that these companies don't follow this advice to a T, or sometimes not at all. And the reason is that these startups are so famous and so huge that they can expect something different from a visitor when they come. So like if you go to Apple's website, you know what Apple is. You're probably looking for their iPhone page and so on and so forth. You might even go there because you want to look at their 2-hour advertisement. But like this is not the case for most of us. And so the list that I'm about to go through really is the standard and best practice for startups that can expect that most people that land here don't know about you yet. You have to explain this in the best possible way. And so with that said, the checklist that we love to use is to have a headline, which is the biggest piece of text. I think you can actually be instructed here to use an example. I will open up a landing page that I've actually helped build. So here we have a landing page for the company Whisperit. And so here we can see that we have a headline, the biggest piece of text, as you can see here. And here it says compliant AI dictation for law firms. And then you have the sub-headline, which kind of expands on the main headline. You have a call to action, a button, almost always. It can be like a short form, like, hey, leave your email or something like that. But almost always there is some type of button here. We have a visual that can be located either on the side to the right, or it can sometimes be located kind of below if we have kind of centered text in there and all the rest. And then we have some sort of social proof. So that's the list that most startups should just simply copy and use, especially in the early days. But so if we look at Autoport, I think that this is very interesting, where we see that they have decided to use kind of a mix here. So they have, this is essentially like, is this one headline or two? But like, this is the biggest piece of text. So if you read this, it says, Unified Registry of Foundation Model Weights for Distributed Inference and Deployment. So I suppose this was actually one sentence, so this is the headline. But it's quite long, and what they've decided to do is also that they stylize this in different ways. So even here, it feels like quite a lot. Then for some reason, they have a contact us email in the middle, and then they have the subheadline, which is quite small. Instant model hot swaps, fast cold starts, predictive LLM scaling, secure access control, all on your infrastructure and cloud. So that's definitely kind of a standard sub-headline in the kind of the how many characters you use and so on and so forth. Then we have the call to action. Here's a type of social proof. So it says backed by Y Combinator. And we just had a fantastic question from the absolutely wonderful Alex. So Alex, as always, you are more than welcome to join. I just don't want to keep bugging you, since we also have another stream to do tomorrow. If you're willing to jump on, you're always warmly welcome. But again, I just feel like I'm bugging you all the time about this. So it's totally up to you, but I'll send you an invite if you're up for it. So feel free to send me a DM or leave a comment here, and I'll send you an invite. But otherwise, please enjoy the show. I hope it's not too bad feedback. I hope you're not like scratching. Oh, sorry, the scratching the walls. Oh, you mentioned the Alex, the video agency guru. So Alex will be on next week. Unfortunately, Alex was not able to join us today, but he will be joining us next week. So I'm super excited about that. I hadn't met Alex before, so I just asked the question openly on Twitter, do we have some creative agency experts that would love to come on the show? Got an answer which both Alex and George, who had been on the show, recommended, and I was just like, I have to have Alex here. But so yeah, I couldn't agree more. But yeah, thanks so much, Alex. So next week, promise to send you a ping. And here we also have Ed. Always great to have you here, my friend. But so here we have what's kind of interesting, like being backed by Y Combinator is definitely a type of social credibility, especially in the startup sphere, where you're just like, okay, so this is a cool new piece of, like a cool new product, probably using very cool new technology, stuff like that. And Alex, thanks so much. I hope that we're gonna we're gonna absolutely smash this goal to keep the chat active. But so what I can say here is that while this is very it's a very powerful piece of social proof, and another version of that can be to have like, oh, we just raised so and so much money. So something that you can commonly see, I can show here because I saw that another startup that's quite active in the community raised some money. So big congrats to Synthflow for that. So what you can see here is that they have kind of this top post. We're thrilled to share that Synthflow has raised 7.4 million in funding to advance no-code voice AI for SMEs. So this is also a type of social proof. We're just like, oh, like this startup is good. They will like stay around for a while. Like, so, you know, I feel more confident about giving them a try. But what can be very also good to think about is that this sort of social proof doesn't explain who the product is for. So when you have social proof that includes like, oh, here's like this is some of our customers, that can be very powerful as well, because that's actually like explanatory of like who the product is for, which helps like the visitor to decide like, is this something for me or someone I know? But so finally, we also have a visual. So I would say that most things here like check the boxes. But what I would say is that this is quite a non-standard headline, and it makes me a little bit, it's a little bit jarring for me when it's this long, and I'm not quite sure like with this different style. So I'm not like, it doesn't take me just a split second to read what this is about. Again, if we visit either Whisper It or again go back to Synthflow, we can see that these types of headlines are usually meant to be like able to be read in like 1 second, maybe 2. Like it shouldn't take you more than a split second to read them. So effortless human-like AI phone calls. You know, it's very easy to digest, because you know, a person is waiting for the page to load. They will see, what is this? But if you're met with this, you know, it also doesn't like really stand out super clearly. So that is probably something I would work on, and I probably wouldn't have the contact information right here. But otherwise, I think 2 things are interesting here. So number 1, the language and the jargon. And so actually, since we have a fantastic designer here in the chat that just said that the channel, I thought this would be interesting to include. So Alex here from Bake Design says that this alignment makes it hard for the eye to scan. We are used to read from left to right, and it takes additional effort to hoot to the next line. Couldn't agree more. And Alex says here, contact us might go to the top right corner. Exactly right. And this is also sometimes where you can find like a contact us button or something. So if you for some reason want to have the literal email here, cool. But yeah, I would also definitely go for something like that. Thanks so much, Alex, as always. But so when it comes to the overall copy, I think it's very interesting to talk about jargon. So I usually recommend to write the way you talk. And this is actually advice from Paul Graham, who is the founder of Y Combinator. And the reason being is that when we write, we very often start using like terms like revolutionary and what more like we're disrupting this, disrupting that, stuff like. If we were at the bar and somebody asked us, like kind of like half listening because they're doing something else as well, like, hey, so what's Outerport? What are you working on there? And you're like, Outerport is a unified registry of foundation model weights for distributed inference and deployment. Like it's quite a mouthful. it's very hard to say, and most people hearing that would probably be like, "Whoa, I'm not exactly sure what you just said." But so here's the thing: it can be like what I would say is that at least this doesn't use kind of like this, like, oh, it's revolutionizing, oh, it's disrupting, that kind of buzzwordy in that sense language. It actually is quite descriptive. It is a unified registry for foundation model weights for distributed inference and deployment. It is very matter of fact, which is good. But it is very exclusionary in the sense of like it excludes people that don't understand what this language means. And I can say, even as a technical person, I don't understand this perfectly. And so I would say that the one time that can be fine is if you're extremely confident in who your user is. And it can also be a way of communicating with them, almost like in a secret language. So, and this is actually the case with Y Combinator itself. So even though Paul Graham says, write the way you talk, avoid jargon, he named this company, this accelerator, or this investment vehicle almost, Y Combinator, because Y Combinator is a term in computer science, which is a program that runs other programs. And of course, this being an analogy to the basic idea of Y Combinator, where it acts as a program that runs other startups. It's a startup that invests in other startups. And like this could be seen as an inside joke, or an inside like an inside secret language between like hackers and nerds who Y Combinator wanted to invest in. So if they would have taken like a name like disrupt VC or something, it's just like the most generic thing you possibly could, then that might not send that signal to these people like, we speak your language. So I would actually assume that Autoport probably knows what they're doing, because most of the time when people use this like super jargony and like very buzzwordy type of language, you're just like, these are trying to obfuscate what they're doing. But like Autoport here is actually very specific. So I would say they probably know their users extremely well, and that's why they use this language. So in general, be careful with jargon unless you're absolutely certain, and then I think it's totally fine. Another point here with the visual that I think I just saw a comment from Alex as well, was that it would be nice to see a video instead of a screenshot to better understand what's going on. And so this was the second part that I wanted to give feedback on here. But it's super common for startups when they kind of get started in the early days, because they are usually not, they tend to be engineers, technical people. They're not super confident in design, and they're iterating very, very fast, which means that if you design something, it can be hard to if you're just like changing something very fast, and then you kind of want the website to stay up to date. What sounds like a great idea is like, hey, let's just take a screenshot of our current app, and that way, it takes a second, and then it's ready. But the problem with this is that there is just so much information where I don't know what to look at. So, and it's not very readable. So you can immediately see here, you're probably watching me on a pretty small screen. But even for me, this is quite hard to read. And like here is like some small icons of like C lineage, 15 active deployments. You can sort by number of deployments. Average wait is 8 minutes. There is so much going on. And so what's usually the case is that you have two paths to go down, or rather, you can pick a video like Alex said here. I would say that personally, I'm not a huge fan of a video in the hero. I would rather leave that a bit for later down the page. And the reason being is that when you land on a hero, you have, for those of you who might not be familiar with the term hero, I forgot to define it. Hero section is simply what you can see when you land on a website or a landing page before you start scrolling. And this is also called above the fold, and everything that is below where you have, which you can only see when you start scrolling, that's called below the fold. But so in this hero, the only purpose of it is to act like a trailer for the rest of the landing page. So if for the rest of the landing page a movie where you can go through an entire structure and you want to see everything that's there, and you can use very almost like a story structure. The hero is the trailer. If you can get the point across of what this is in half a second, that is fantastic. And it just so happens to be that images are of course easier and faster to take in than a video, because a video, even if it's very short, even if it's just zooming on certain parts, it will still take longer, and you might still be kind of unsure, will this be on repeat, what's happening here? It will also be something that's going on, so that which might take your focus away from actually reading. So what I really like thinking about is kind of like if we would do some eye tracking, we'd love to, for somebody who lands on a landing page, who probably immediately starts by getting a visual impression. Okay, this looks like some type of professional who's at the computer. Maybe you catch a glimpse of this is something audio, maybe, but that's half a second, just what is this? Then you read compliant AI dictation for law firms. Then back to the visual. Oh, okay, all right. So yeah, here there's someone talking. Transcribe documents, cool. Okay, so this sounds interesting. Can you tell me more? Yes, absolutely. Here we go. And then you see, oh, it's popular. Okay, but I'm not quite ready to book a demo yet. And then you start scrolling. So I would say that video is one way to go. I prefer to wait with it a bit. But you can either do something like this, where you have some type of almost like modals or pop-outs, which is where you show kind of the some highlights of what the point of this product is. So this doesn't you're not expected to understand the entire product here at all. This is just a trailer to get you hooked, but just get that immediate impression. An alternative for this is what you can find on Basecamp. So Basecamp is, of course, a fantastic product with founders who are some of the best copywriters on the planet. They're quite text-heavy, but what you can see here, when they have essentially a screenshot, here is a lot of things going on, but what they have is that they have these highlights of just or annotations rather, that says oh, card table make work visible. Card tables make work visible as it moves through phases. The difference between that and just seeing this, and I'm okay, it says done, QA, in progress, on the side. That is not great. But oh, sorry, I actually forgot the background music. Thanks so much, Alex. You're the best. I forgot to turn that off. Thank you so much. Wonderful. That was just for the intro, actually. Thanks. And so basically, that is your second option. So if you really want to go this path of having a screenshot, then definitely make sure to include some annotations or help us see what we should be looking at. I will just give you one more example of of another website. And so, hi, Adam, as well. Great to see you. So here, if we have a look at Craftful, which is also a YC startup that is just fantastic, we can see that they use another strategy, which is also really cool. And that is, so speaking of hero visuals, This is, of course, sort of a video, but this is just a representation of what is happening. And you can kind of feel like, oh, this is just ongoing. It's not really a video in the sense of like a clear repeat. It's more like an animation in a sense. And so that is where I would feel like this is glanceable. And I understand that I'm not supposed to stay here to like understand more. It's just like, oh yeah, got the point. Super cool. But what they do also is that when they use images, and this is actually something that I gave feedback on when I did give them some landing page feedback, was that you can also zoom in to make this clearer. So if you have a visual and you want to use screenshots in some way, then try to zoom in. You don't have to show the entire thing, just show the most important thing. And so these are all options that one could consider here. But so that was some feedback for Outreport. And so I thought we could go on and have a look at a few more. I've noticed that I have a very hard time to stop yapping at one page. So I think it's probably better to try to run through a few. So if we have a look here, we can see that some pitches here. Let's see if something catches our eye. Extract documents straight to your spreadsheets. That's kind of interesting. Like, I wonder who that is for, is my first question. Is this for doctors? Is it for lawyers? I am interested. So here we go. So we're landing here, and this landing page uses one thing that can also definitely be used, and that is to use like a little tag here. So it says AI-powered data extraction. So if I remember correctly, we will have a quick look. Oh no, I don't. Okay, so I was thinking about an example that uses something like that. I will try to remember if I've seen anyone else. But either way, what you can usually see is that it's almost like a little pill. It's quite common to use a design where you have a little call out like this. Then we have a headline, we have a subheadline, we have the call to actions. We are missing social proof like in the main hero, but they've placed it here in the menu. And then we have this example of a visual that is vertically aligned. So it's not here horizontally on the side. And what we can see here immediately is that there are some pros and cons to this. So a pro is, of course, that when you align it vertically, you can have it bigger. But what you lose is the immediate glanceability. And to me, this is really huge. So I am personally a fan, even though this can be extremely aesthetic when done right. It is still like I can't immediately see what this is without scrolling down. So perhaps one could say that, oh, the purpose of this is to like be so interesting that you want somebody to scroll down. But I think the likelihood of that versus like being able to showcase what you're doing well enough here so that people want to scroll for the rest of the page, I would still be on that side personally. And what I can also say is that this is often also kind of a crutch for like using kind of screenshots or very detailed and like images with low readability. Then you're like, oh, to see this, we have to make it really, really big. And so then we can use it, then it's fine. But look what happens if we go on the mobile view. And this will actually be interesting because some startups think of this and they change it so that, you know, they might not even show the image or they show a different image when we go on the mobile view. But I have no idea what Midship has done in this case. So we will experience this together. Okay, so here we go. That will be very, very small on your mobile phone. Like what is happening in these lines? That is very hard to see. And so what I would say here is that in all likelihood, it would be better to use a more stylized image. So what's nice here is, of course, that they're giving you the full view of Google Sheet, the Google Sheet UI, so that you understand, oh, this is about Google Sheets. That is fantastic. Like using logos and stuff to communicate basic ideas, analogies, stuff like that, fantastic. But again, if we have a look at Craftful, what they've done is that instead of like showing like, oh, here's an actual Slack message, and like, here's what this turns into. They just use representations, and this is not what the actual interface looks like. They're communicating an idea, not the literal interface. And that is also what I would recommend here. Oh, we have Brian in the chat as well. Hey, Brian, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. And again, thank you so much to everyone here who keeps the chat active. I think gifts in the hero section work. I agree. Like when it comes to this, if you do it right, this would to me is an example of doing it right. Maybe I'm just a bit scarred of seeing so many like essentially product launch videos that there's just so much happening and you're expected to kind of look through sometimes like 15, 30 seconds. And even if it's 5 seconds, it's very often very, it takes up so much of your attention. So I would say that, use it very, very carefully. But either way, so what we can see here as well is that speaking of Ed in the chat here, who said here, okay, the other me has arrived. Ed kind of laughed at something I said last time, and that was that I called something a design smell. And I think what was the Ed, do you remember what you thought I kind of said wrong? Was it the there's a figure of speech in English, and of course not my native language, so now I'm completely spacing on it. But either way, I think the term for me of design smell actually comes from computer science. When you look at code and you just see that the architecture is like, this is not in a great state. And I would say that here is something that's a bit similar in the sense of design smell, in the sense of like, this doesn't seem to be quite properly aligned. There's something a bit strange here. And so I would say that this is very small. This has a huge amount of white space here. And so there's something immediately that kind of turns me off a little bit. And I'm just a little bit hesitant. So to me, things doesn't have to be incredibly well designed for me to just kind of move on and focus on the actual content. But when something is a little bit off, you're just like, I wonder what's going on here. And yeah, thanks, Brian. I mean, you're definitely counted among the rock stars. But yeah, thanks so much. But so if we actually have a look at the copy here, so again, this little call out or tag, whatever we want to call it, it says AI-powered data extraction. So very general, but it's at least descriptive. So if we continue on here, smart document extraction straight into your spreadsheets. So it feels kind of like half of a repetition of AI-powered data extraction and then extraction again. Like, so it feels like, I'm not quite sure what I gained by reading this. But here, we include that it's for spreadsheets specifically. But I'm not sure still who is this for, because this could be for so many different use cases. And this might be like optimal for investors, for doctors, for lawyers. I have no idea yet. And so if you continue reading, we'll see what we can find out. So our AI reads and understands your complex documents, extracting key information and organizing it into your preferred spreadsheet format. It learns your unique data landscape, ensuring accuracy and consistency across all your data processing. So to me, this is a bit more of the example, like, this is all like to each their own. But to me, when you start using language like unique data landscape, like extracting key information, organizing the preferred spreadsheet format, like, so maybe that was one of the main points here. But like, I'm starting to feel a little bit of obfuscation. I'm just like, yo, what is this and who is it for? So if it's just like, oh, it takes, so if we look at the actual visual here, we see that it has an example, Green Valley Rent Roll.pdf, and then it says Green Valley Plaza rent roll tenancy review. So this seems to be some type of real estate, I suppose. And then it rolls up into types and suites, tenants, and occupied date. So I suppose this would be if we just have a lot of information about tenants in in a PDF format, and we want to move that into spreadsheets. Sounds like a really painful job. So immediately, like if somebody that has these types of PDFs sees this, I'm sure that they would be like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what I'm looking for. Please, I just want to try this immediately. So it sounds very much like a painkiller product. So that's fantastic. And that's usually the case when you use kind of like these standard formats. Hey, we turn PDFs into like Google Sheets. Hey, we turn HTML pages into PDFs. Like, it doesn't sound super sexy, but that's usually fantastic businesses because it's stuff that people have to do. They're not looking for an incredible UI, like a wonderful experience in that sense. They want to get a functional job done, and they're like, someone's shot them in the leg and they need some bandage. Like, you're not thinking about anything else. So that I think is very, very cool. But I would probably focus on like much more clear and simple language of just like midship helps. For instance, let's say, I don't suppose this was for real estate agents, but since it's the term that pops into my mind, real estate agents to turn PDFs of listings and tenants and all that stuff into Google Sheets to manage effectively, or to for their bookkeeping or whatever it is. Like that type of the cat sat on the mat type language, just the simplest possible terms. What is this? Who is it for? What's the benefit you're getting out of using it? I think that would be the way to go for me. But so with that, I think we can again continue looking around. So we have about 10 minutes to go for today. So we should have time for at least one more, maybe two. So we continue reading, and this, of course, is actually, I saw that there was a designer who shared when he was going through, people were sharing their portfolios, and he was showing off when he was running through and looking at what catches his eye, and then he goes in and checks it out, who he might want to hire. And so this, I think, is an interesting experience as well. They're scrolling through amazing companies and still, what stands out? It's a very reptile brain, So I'm not really looking for anything specific. I'm just looking for something that stands out. So here we have patched open source framework to accelerate development task with AI. Okay, so it doesn't sound super fun. Overlap, a new podcast app that uses AI to curate best moments for you. That sounds fun. Let's have a look at that. So joinoverlap.com. All right, so here we have something that at least pops. You have to give them that. But immediately, what I would also say, and thanks so much, Ed. If this were you, I would just use AI to listen to everything of it and just turn it into 100 action items in a textbook. So I'm looking forward to seeing you do these types of streams, my friend. What I would say is that the first experience when I landed here is just that this what turns out to be I wasn't even sure what this was when I landed. This felt like it felt so intrusive that I almost assumed it was a cookie banner or something. This part I can't use red because it will just melt into it. So, and white, I suppose, will do kind of the same. But maybe black will be the best color, actually. Yeah, so here, this is so intrusive. It takes out so much of my attention that it's a problem. So I would never use such a strong color that's also the same as your primary color in the footer here. Yeah, thanks so much, George, for hopping on. So good to see you. And yeah, so again, George was the guest here last week. And again, podcast experts, the first thing that comes up is podcast like never before. So if you have any feedback here, George, please let me know. And so here we have Brian already doing my work for me, like already getting in on the pitch. And so this is very interesting, I think. So what we can see here is that it feels like this is probably a B2C app. And what we can see here immediately is that they try to use go by the example of less is more, because they just have a headline, a visual, and they even put the visual to the left, meaning that it kind of takes up more of our attention faster, because of course we read left to right. And so like everything they're doing here, they're trying to be hyper visual, like very like a big headline, and they even kind of put their sub headline in the footer, because they're just like, most people aren't going to read this. But it's interesting. So we have the visual, the headline, sub headline is in the footer, the call to action is also in the footer. And again, this is where like it feels very strange, because here this might be, oh yeah, nice, I can actually move this, fantastic. You can see here that it also has like privacy policy and stuff here. So if there was a footer below this, then this would be more of a regular section. But it just feels a bit strange, right, to have that here. And this isn't really focused. So I would like put this here. Like if you're going all out on like giving this very clear message of like, hey, this is an app that you should download right now, why put it kind of over here? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I would put it like here, big and strong, whoop, download. And so, but again, Brian kind of like doing my job for me here. We see that the headline reads, podcast like never before. And so what Brian has noticed here is that this is not very descriptive. What does this mean? If somebody asks like, hey, founder of Overlap, what's Overlap? Can you tell me a bit more? And they say, podcast like never before. You're like, sorry? What does that mean? And so one of the goals of a great headline or a great one-liner is that, in my mind at least, that the listener should be able, in the best possible case, the person reading or listening to it should be able to reproduce your idea or explaining it to you, because it should be that clear. So, for instance, what Brian said here, podcasts of Amber Alerts. So if we check out Amber Alerts as a term, so I suppose the term Amber Alert, again, not being a native English speaker, an Amber Alert or a child abduction emergency alert is a message distributed by an alert system to ask the public for help to find, like for instance, abductions and stuff like that. So it's like a message that's sent to a lot of people, like to make sure that, oh, we're all on alert right now. And so that's going to be very interesting. Like, so if somebody said podcast of Amber Alerts, I would probably say that, oh, so I'm not like, my first reaction would be like, I'm not sure exactly how that's different from having a notification on, or like, is it like, oh, it's not a notification for a particular like podcast subscription, but more like, hey, this new podcast is trending. Like, you might not have heard about them, but you should know about it. The whole world should know about it. And like, if the founder would then be like, yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly the idea. Then like, that's a good pitch. And again, I've kind of just heard the term Amber Alert, but again, being Swedish, I've never really used the term myself. But like, if it was podcast like never before, videos like never before, if Pactto used this headline of feedback like never before, that's true in some sense, but it's not very descriptive. So if we continue reading here, I guess we'll find out more. Overlap is an AI-powered podcast assistant. Okay, so that's more of a regular one-liner. So a podcast assistant, it's still not super clear. That sounds more like something that's for the creator of podcasts. Like, I expect someone that makes a podcast to have assistants, and this is an AI-powered one. but like it's kind of like, who would expect as a podcast listener to have an assistant? Like it's a bit strange to me. But if we continue on here, ask it about any topic or person, and it'll give you a custom podcast playlist of clips relevant to what you asked for. It's a breakthrough way to listen to podcasts. So, like using terms like here we go with a bit of like what I'm not a huge fan of, like very bombastic language. It's a breakthrough way to listen to podcast. It's like it's a breakthrough way to eat your ice cream, and you're like, what are you talking about? Like what break? Like it sounds cool, but breakthrough. Like you know, with language, you're kind of like setting the tone of like what this is, and like how much I can trust you know, any statements, and like when you use kind of too bombastic language, you kind of lose me at least. But so the goal here was essentially to give you a custom playlist of clips relevant to what you asked for. So this sounds more like some type of, I don't know, personal DJ or like Spotify recommendations, but for podcasts. Like I don't know, like if a For You feed for podcasts or something like that. I guess it's a bit more interactive in the sense of like you're actually asking it rather than just like consuming, and it starts figuring out what you love. But yeah, like I get it, so that's cool. And with the visual now, again, we can see that, you know, I want to hear about the restaurant businesses, or like help me learn about strategy. So I feel that like reading through all of this, I get the point. So that's pretty cool, where they kind of get the point across in just a hero essentially, even though it's kind of broken up in like a footer section as well. But so that's cool, and again has a little social proof up here with YC. But you know what I would love to see here is basically, you know, put the call to action here, include social proof, but like that could be fine there. But like, you know, download it, like if you're an app, I want to see the ratings and reviews or ratings rather of like, oh, it's rated 4.9 stars from 20,000 people. Like we have millions of listeners. That kind of stuff is what I really want to see here. Include the sub headline in the actual hero. I would, in all likelihood, switch order of these so that you have the visual to the right. This is standard, and I would update the headline to be more descriptive, so that if that's all you hear, you should be able to describe the product. And use kind of more simple language, and don't go as hard with the bombastic language. But otherwise, I think it sounds very cool, and like it looks beautifully designed inside. So that's nice. But so with that, we're actually kind of coming up on time for today. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who has tuned in. So everyone from Mark, Alex, Ed, we had Adam, Brian, George, and to everyone else tuning in today. Thank you so much for coming on. It's such a pleasure to do this when you see fantastic friends and fantastic creatives like actually listening and helping me out along the way even. And so again, to anyone that kind of joined us a bit late here and like might need a quick introduction again of the app Pactto and the Pactto team. For those who haven't tried it out, it's basically like a tool similar to Loom that lets you do screen recordings, but the focus is 100% on feedback. And what they do to help you to just give the best feedback in the world is that they help you with these fantastic markup tools that I've been able to use all the while I've been giving this feedback here today. And what I think is even more powerful is that once you have recorded your video and you're about to send it over, and for instance, if I were to send this over to the founders of these YC companies, and it's just as you can imagine, just a lot of feedback where they're like, okay, so what should I actually do here? He said a lot of things. Some we might agree with, some we might not, but he said a lot of things. He circled back to things. So if they start taking action notes and then like I come back to a subject, they have to like play, pause, write, and then like, oh, now he came back to that. No, that now he changed his mind. Oh no, what do I do? But so what's amazing about Pactto is that once you have recorded your feedback, you can actually use prompts just as you would with ChatGPT, but it's based on your transcript from the video, meaning that you can say, hey, I want you to create action points for everything I said in this feedback video, and it will go through your transcript and figure out, oh, here are the 10 things that you mentioned that this founder should do. And again, whether I circled back to something, it will handle all that to take care of what was the most important things and where I ended up. You can even create, like I often post these videos and then a tweet. You can say, hey, write a tweet that's summarizing the theme of what I was talking about. It can do that. It can even create blog posts. So if you want to create this type of feedback and post for SEO or just on your blog in general to showcase your creative skills on giving feedback, that's just one click away. We've tried that. It does an amazing job. And again, you can get super creative here, whatever you want to do. And we host these feedback Tuesdays with Pactto every week at 8 p.m. CEST. At least during the summer, otherwise it's back to CET, of course. But again, I want to say a huge thanks to the founder, Demian from Pactto, and everyone else. It's just a pleasure to work with the whole team. Again, my name is Elias, and I work on the growth side of things over at Pactto. And I just love hosting these feedback sessions. We have great people on, like Alex from Bake Design, George from Cut the Pod. And as Brian just asked, do these feedback sessions get recorded via Pactto? Yes, sir, we absolutely do. And it's just a fantastic opportunity to actually use the tool. And but in general, we just want to get creatives on who can share their perspective on whatever their expertise is, whether it is landing pages, design, podcasts, video editing, whatever it is. We love to have you on. So if there's anyone who has any such experience and would love to come on one day, please just let me know. Send me a DM or leave a comment, and I would love to invite you. And as Brian said here, I would be absolutely delighted to link some examples to these kind of like generations of whether it's tweets or action items like that as well. That's a fantastic idea. But again, thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. You're the best. See you next Tuesday. But until then, have a lovely day or evening, and talk to you soon.